Hi, I'm Eric Blume, editor and publisher of Electric Perspectives magazine at the Edison Electric Institute. We're here in San Francisco at EEI's annual convention, and I have the pleasure of sitting here with Jon Arnold, who's the managing director of the worldwide utilities practice at Microsoft.
Thanks, Eric.
Welcome.
Glad to be here. Yeah.
Welcome.
Terrific.
Let's start out about talking about a bigger picture about utilities and vis-a-vis Microsoft, vis-a-vis the things that Microsoft does with utilities and the challenges that utilities are looking at today.
You know, I think that we're all aware of some of the policy and the environmental issues that we have today that we're facing. But I think some of the interesting things you look out into the future. You know, as it's kind of the Wayne Gretzky analysis of where, you know, not where the puck is today, but where it's going to be, you know, 5-10 minutes from now or tomorrow. And you say, well, we talk about the smart energy ecosystem of the future, and you paint a picture. You can paint a picture of all these distributed renewable resources coming online from homes and businesses, and all of a sudden, you know, you get a scenario where you've got a lot of power generation being highly distributed on the distribution system. And how do you deal with that? How do you manage that? And then you bring that energy efficiency portion into it, and all of a sudden the traditional distribution network that was fairly dumb, you know, was very you know, radial in its design, becomes much more and maybe more complex than the transmission system. And so I think the challenge is how do you make that smart? How do you integrate all these various distributed renewable assets, including, you know, electric vehicles? You know, the issue of you scale out 10, 15 years, you say, well, I've got everybody comes home at 5 o'clock and plugs my electric vehicles. And what does that do? How do you manage all that stuff? So I think that's something everybody's grappling with. You know, we talk about how do you register all these devices, and what kind of market system do you use to manage them? So I think that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, as we look forward and we look at how technology is going to manage all that and really and help us keep the lights on. Right.
Right. So now Microsoft has been working with industrial and commercial and on the consumer level too. How do you see the future there?
Well, you know, I think that if you look at power and you say, well, you know, where's it? You know, what segments are the biggest consumers? Whether it's residential, commercial, industrial. I mean, the biggest portion of it is the residential. It's hard to get your hands around. I think people over the years, you know, everybody's had trouble how to manage that. Certainly, I think commercial is next, and industrial certainly. That's the big guys, and certainly utilities and others have programs to manage. They know where they are, and they have fairly sophisticated energy programs to manage and national accounts and things like that. We're spending a lot of time looking at that consumer, that residential side of the business, and trying to figure out from a energy efficiency, from a demand response, and then how they play into that energy ecosystem of the future where you have these renewables with electric vehicles. And we think that can be a real game changer. How do you manage all that and fit that in? Because once again, that's a very disruptive nature. You've got, you know, millions of these vehicles coming home, plugging in, and maybe even want to sell power back to the grid during peak times.
So how is Microsoft working with utilities then in terms of partnerships and because utilities work in a very different way today?
Yes. You know, and I think one of the things, you know, we just announced our home solution, which is a consumer energy management solution for the home for the consumer, and we think that if you look at where the environmental pressures that we have, the regulatory issues, the utilities knowing that they have to demand keeps increasing. How do I manage all this? We believe that the home solution does several things in the first version. One, it allows the consumer to figure out, you know, where am I using my energy in the home? The second thing it does at a more fundamental level is like, hey, well, how do I compare to others? And there's studies that show that, you know, comparison with your neighbors and others, and, you know, the same size house and number of families is like, that's a hot thing. Whether you use, you know, whether there's $300 a month versus $200 a month.
It has a big psychological effect.
It surely does. And we want to, you know, be able to create that. And then the last thing is like, hey, what kind of recommendations do you use? So we've created, you know, kind of our first solution of our own around the consumer energy management solution that does all this. It's a state-of-the-art web portal. We've licensed analytics from Department of Energy and Lawrence Berkeley Labs. We've created a very sophisticated calculation system that allows and we want to make this a great experience because we know that from a consumer perspective, We don't want to make it a VCR experience. We want to make this thing a TiVo experience and very seamless and do profiles. There's not a lot of stuff. So we believe that we can actually, and this first, the first release of this is actually help utilities change customer behavior, be smarter about their energy usage, and use this as a platform as we go forward to be able to manage that more complex environment. When you start getting into the device control of the home, you start getting into the electric vehicles. So being able to help manage that and coordinate that with the electric power system, with the utilities, is very important for us.
Well, it's very important, but it's a huge deal. I mean, if you're working with a transmission operator,
yes,
for example, that transmission operator is making all sorts of decisions right then and there. Microsoft is also, how do they converge? I mean, how are they going to converge?
So if our vision is this kind of demand elasticity. So if you look at the power system, it's been some of it's siloed, some of it isn't, but that whole connectivity, we call it the smart energy ecosystem, so that you have the fact that you get the signals with the whether if from the grid operators, if there is a peaking problem, from the grid operators, they can provide time of use signals down through our solution that's integrated in with the utilities that we partnered with. We have this doesn't work without having utility partners for sure. Right. We need the usage information and be able to get this time of use pricing into the home, so we can signal, whether you're sending messages to the profile that happens automatically. Or, as you look further down, there's devices. So, we are partnering with utilities. We are tying this back into the solutions. It's like partners like, Itron and Ariva, even as we go down the road with this home energy management system, because it really becomes a kind of the center point. We're starting off, with the portal. We're going to go to the, kind of revolutionize the way that thermostats work, that whole, and make it more like a TiVo experience than a VCR experience. And then as we start to get some scale in all these various devices and electric vehicles, to be able to integrate that in with the value chain to the utilities.
Right. Interoperability, grid interoperability right now is a big issue for the smart grid. Is Microsoft involved with all that?
Yeah, so certainly we've been involved in the NIST work, because we see the value in having the open standards and open protocols that go with this, because that's not how you're going to make your money. You want to provide the business functionality, and so we fully support those initiatives. We support the ability to innovate, because we think that it's not about one company either. It's about have a very large partner ecosystem that we work with and bring with us, right. And having them integrated in with us. But at the same time, you got to have the standards, because utilities you can't afford to rip and replace everything. It's right. An evolution, so you got to have the standards. Another one is the Common Information Model Group. We hosted the user conference back in December in Redmond. We're a big, strong believer in the Common Information Model to deliver this smart energy ecosystem, and it's a journey. All this is a journey, and we got to have the pieces in place and the standards. Working with the federal government, working with NIST, Jon Arnold, and those folks to really evolve this, so that as we go on this long journey, that the stuff does works together well, and pieces can be moved and changed.
Great. Well, it sounds like Microsoft has its work cut out for itself.
We're excited. I think the home announcement, I think a lot of people have seen that. It's been well received. We put out our partner utilities. We continue to evolve that. And that's just a platform we're going to use to integrate in with the rest of the utility systems. And I think, once again, partnering with utilities is a key part of that strategy.
Great, Jon.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks for coming by.
Yep.
I'm Eric Blume. Thanks a lot.